Every day, the world is watching videos of Donald Trump signing executive orders and dismantling US government agencies, all in an effort to make America great again. But what if I told you that with every signature, he's actually making the US much weaker on the global stage and systematically creating a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for one of America's greatest geopolitical rivals to step in and fill the void? In Trump's first month in office, he has pulled the United States out of some of the world's most important organizations and agreements. The World Health Organization? Check. Paris Climate Accords? Check. Donald Trump has even withdrawn the United States from the United Nations Human Rights Council. And whether you agree with Trump's decisions or not, the outcome is undeniable. Each time the US steps back, it leaves an empty space in global leadership. But Trump's latest move to shut down USAID is giving China one of the greatest geopolitical wins in 2025. USAID, which stands for the United States Agency for International Development, was created to provide humanitarian assistance, fight poverty, and support development in struggling nations across the world. Now, to be fair, USAID has funded real charitable efforts, from disaster relief to healthcare programs, even HIV outreach. But that's only half the story. USAID has also been deeply tied to political interference, corruption, and regime change operations around the world. It's simply been used as a tool to push US foreign policy, often in ways that have destabilized the very countries it claimed to help. USAID has also been the primary vehicle the US government has used to produce anti-China content and an intense overseas media battle. Last September, the House of Representatives passed a bill of $1.6 billion to deliver anti-China propaganda overseas, and as this article from Responsible Statecraft points out, to discredit Beijing's Belt and Road initiatives worldwide. Trust me, this is the major story developing in US-China relations right now, because with Trump shutting down USAID, we're witnessing something even bigger: the unraveling of America's role as the world's sole superpower. At the same time, China is increasing international funding, positioning themselves as a key negotiator in global conflicts, and using the Belt and Road Initiative to cement their influence across the developing world. Trump may call it America first, but in reality, it looks a lot more like America handing global leadership to China on a silver platter. Just look at this Business Insider article, which reveals that the USAID shutdown could make China more powerful. It reveals USAID was founded at the Cold War's height, but has never operated as a purely altruistic agency. Instead, the agency works with strategically important countries and assists US commercial interests. In the words of Democratic Senator Andy Kim, "Our assistance abroad helps fight disease and stop starvation and famine, but it's also a tool to stave off the expansionist reach of authoritarian leaders in China, Russia, and Iran." That's quite the bold statement from a US senator, who has publicly admitted that while USAID does in fact help people with charity, the organization most importantly is a propaganda tool used against countries that the United States government sees as a threat. And whether it's regime change operations throughout South America or arming internationally designated terrorist organizations in Syria, almost every government collapse in recent memory has the United States playing a role at some point along the way, all the while costing US taxpayers billions of dollars. But Trump's closure of USAID has just exposed how much the US government has been spending on propaganda around the world. In 2023, the agency funded training and support for 6,200 journalists, assisted 707 non-state news outlets, and supported 279 media sector civil society organizations dedicated to strengthening independent media. The 2025 foreign aid budget included over $268 million allocated by Congress to support independent media and the free flow of information. Translation: the cost of spreading US propaganda worldwide. This just goes to show how extensive and far-reaching the narrative push has been. It really makes you question just how much truly independent journalism is really out there, which is precisely why YouTube is becoming the #1 resource for people wanting to find truly independent media, much like the channel you're watching now. What's hilarious, though, is that this entire operation is built on the premise that the US is somehow still a beacon of democracy. Back in the 1990s, maybe you could push this idea, but in 2025, it's downright laughable. Now we're seeing mask-off moments from legacy media and their benefactors. Take a look at this Washington Post headline: "Independent media in Russia, Ukraine lose their funding with USAID freeze." Independent media? Really? In Ukraine, 9 out of 10 media outlets rely on USAID funding, and the media industry has received hundreds of millions of dollars going back for over 10 years. When the vast majority of your media is funded by a foreign government, how can you honestly claim to have independent media? It's frankly absurd. If you look at the top 10 countries receiving USAID funding, it's no surprise that Ukraine tops the list, pulling in nearly $5.5 billion in 2024 alone. The next 9 countries each received hundreds of millions of dollars in funding as well. USAID shutting down marks a major retreat of American influence on the global stage. And whether you see that as a positive or negative, one thing is clear: the US is losing its grip and the world is shifting in a new direction. But of course, one of the largest sources of US propaganda is the entire ecosystem of US-funded anti-China journalists and think tanks. This tweet went viral last week, explaining the panic the freezing of funding has had on the anti-China media sphere. Because of the US funding freezing, the entire global ecosystem of China nonprofits is facing an extinction event. I'm not exaggerating for clicks. This is really what is happening. There is genuine panic from the author of this tweet. But to be honest, the author fails to see the irony that she herself has exposed in this thread. She goes on to state, funding from a single government should not be the only thing standing between us and an information blackout on Chinese civil society. So let me get this right. The only way to learn about Chinese civil society is from nonprofits funded by the US government? I challenge the author of this tweet, and anyone for that matter, who relies on the US government for insights into China. If you really want to see what Chinese civil society looks like, buy a plane ticket, fly to China, and go experience it for yourself. Over 65 countries, including the United States, are now visa-free to China, and I have yet to meet a foreigner who has actually traveled to China firsthand and not come away with a completely different experience than what is presented to us daily in Western media. The author continues, a key part of China's agenda is to persuade its own citizens and the world falsely through deception and coercion that democratic systems are not better. Beijing claims its system is the best way to guarantee economic prosperity and stability. But once again, this is a completely false statement. Beijing's opinion is that its form of government is the best for China, and only China. Beijing's government does not go around the world spreading communism and forcing other countries to adapt its system. Interesting enough, that's exactly what the US government does, forcing regime changes and interfering in the domestic politics of independent sovereign nations. Even one of my favorite YouTubers, Johnny Harris, produced a full video mapping every US government-backed coup around the world. The US government actively sanctions many countries around the globe for the sole reason of them not being a democracy. And it's time that journalists, and frankly, every US citizen takes a step back and really examines the state of America's own democracy in 2025. Donald Trump is now going above the law, dismantling government agencies without congressional approval, putting in his billionaire friends like Elon Musk into high-ranking, unofficial government positions, while simultaneously angering every ally of the United States. Ask a Canadian or European how they feel about US democracy right now. America's allies are in absolute shock on how the US president has conducted himself during the first month of office. And to drive this point home, I want you to read this article from the Financial Times entitled Vance's Real Warning to Europe, which states, it is clear that the US can no longer be regarded as a reliable ally for the Europeans. The Trump administration's political ambitions for Europe mean that for now, America is also an adversary, threatening democracy in Europe and even European territory. Trump will use any leverage he has to force America's European allies into compliance on issues from trade and security to their domestic politics. That means that Europe must now start the painful process of de-risking its relationship with the US, looking for areas of dangerous dependence on America and stripping them out of the system. Like I mentioned at the start of today's video, there is a large vacuum being created by the US government, and there is only one country large enough and powerful enough to fill the United States' seat at the table. And this, of course, is China. In fact, we've already seen Europe begin this process of de-risking from the United States. Michael Schumann, chairman of Germany's largest federal trade organization, recently stated, the German economy is under immense pressure. We need policies based on national interest rather than ideological considerations. Trump's return is reshaping global geopolitics. Europe must carefully weigh its options and act in its own interests. Strengthening EU-China relations is clearly a part of that strategy. Good relations with China are in Germany's interests. I'll include a link to all the resources I've used in today's video down in the description for you below. But the simple truth is the United States' reputation is taking a massive hit on the global stage. Meanwhile, with the shutdown of USAID funding, China will have more space to expand its global influence. Simply put, China looks like the good guy on the international stage simply by doing nothing. But China is not satisfied with just that. Through its commitments with the Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has spent more than $1 trillion on gas pipelines, trains, and other trade and infrastructure projects globally. I mean, just look at this map detailing Chinese infrastructure projects in Latin America. The US government is in genuine shock over how much Chinese influence and investment is pouring into the region. But now take a look at the share of foreign aid China sends to each region of the world, almost a perfect distribution across the globe. This ensures that China's influence won't be restricted to its own backyard, but a leader on the world stage. At the country level in 2023, China invested most heavily through BRI in Indonesia at $7.3 billion, followed by Hungary at $4.5 billion and Peru at $2.9 billion. In Africa, where nearly every country has received Chinese investments, new roads, railways, and ports have been constructed over the past 10 years, while billions have been invested into energy infrastructure projects to give more residents electricity. In September last year, Xi Jinping said that China would commit more than $50 billion to Africa in financial aid, and this commitment to Africa alone is larger than the entire $32.5 billion the US spent on aid in the fiscal year of 2024. All of these commitments more than fill the America-sized hole left behind on the global stage, and most importantly, in the fastest growing regions in the world. Everyone, Trump's shutdown of USAID is more than just a symbolic move. It's signs of a broader, ongoing dismantling of America's global leadership. This is the moment when America's claim to global leadership is truly called into question as China emerges as a more stable, constructive force on the world stage. But now, I want to shift our focus to the investing portion of today's video and share with you how geopolitics can influence the future of specific industries. Because one thing we've learned with Donald Trump is that he is not afraid to make drastic changes, and one of the United States' biggest changes in policies came during Trump's very first day in office, when he passed an executive order to unleash the future of America's energy. Donald Trump's declaration of a national energy emergency on Inauguration Day was designed to expedite approvals for energy infrastructure, including nuclear power. And with Trump in charge for the next 4 years, the nuclear energy sector will receive a massive boost in support. If Trump's administration is focusing on energy independence and on nuclear energy, this might prompt other countries to pursue similar policies within their own borders, especially if they're blessed with rich deposits. One of those regions is Saskatchewan, Canada, where one of the world's most promising uranium jurisdictions, the Athabasca Basin, resides. Canada has recently reinforced its commitment to nuclear energy by encompassing new policy endorsements, strategic investments, and technological advancements in the uranium sector. Canada is now on track to become the world's largest uranium supplier, with experts projecting Canada's national uranium production doubling by 2035, ensuring a steady fuel supply for domestic and international nuclear programs. The sponsor of today's video, Mustang Energy, trades under the symbol MECPF and is focused on Canada's promising Athabasca Basin. Let's break down this opportunity here and tell you more about today's video sponsor. Simply put, nuclear energy is experiencing a notable resurgence. AI, data centers, and electric vehicles are driving up electricity demand, while tech giants are increasingly turning to nuclear energy. Companies like Amazon, Alphabet, and Oracle have invested in small modular reactors, SMR technology. Additionally, Meta announced plans for a $10 billion AI data center in Louisiana, powered once again by nuclear energy. What's interesting about this entire situation is that uranium spot price is down 36% since its peak, meaning that this is a potentially great time to conduct due diligence on Mustang Energy. Nuclear is the only reliable, carbon-free energy source that can meet demand. AI data centers are projected to consume 8 times more energy by 2030. Now let's focus on Mustang Energy, which owns numerous projects in the Athabasca Basin and is planning on drilling in the months ahead. Its key projects are Ford Lake, which is close to major uranium deposits like Cameco's Millennium, and Denison's Griffin and Phoenix deposits. Cigar Lake East and Rough Rider South, which are located next to Cigar Lake Mine, one of the world's highest graded uranium mines, and finally Yellowstone and Yellowstone East, which is close to Cluff Lake Mine, which produced over 62 million pounds of uranium, located just south of the Fission Uranium Project that was acquired by Paladin Energy for $789 million in December of 2024. The significance of Mustang Energy's potential lies in the location of these projects, the Athabasca Basin. MECPF's projects are close in proximity to major uranium discoveries, and the uranium market is facing a severe supply shortage, with demand vastly outpacing production. Many uranium mines were shut down in the past decade, and new mines take many years to develop. The US relies heavily on foreign uranium, which is geopolitically risky, increasing the need for domestic and allied sources like Canada. Mustang Energy is a pure-play uranium exploration company focused on Canada's Athabasca Basin, which is home to one of the world's largest and highest-grade uranium mines. Mustang Energy owns multiple projects strategically located near these uranium giants. Finally, Mustang Energy has partnered and is working with industry leaders such as Axiom Exploration, DeRouge Geological Consulting, and Red Cloud Securities and Sky Harbor Resources. One of the points I often make in my videos is that we study geopolitics because it influences the future of our markets. And like we've seen over the past month with Donald Trump in office, policies and entire industries can change overnight depending on who is in the White House. If you're interested in learning more about uranium and Mustang Energy, I'm going to include links to their investor presentation and website down below. But as always, please do your own due diligence and market research before making any investments. Thank you all for your continued support, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.